And I think you're going to have a situation with like Odell and Jarvis in Cleveland, right? Baker did way better and the Browns did way better when Odell was out. But now when there's like Jarvis and Odell, it's like it's almost too much and they kind of hurt each other in a sense. And Baker played worse and the Browns played worse. And I think that same situation is going to happen in Tennessee.
Welcome to the Sports Forecasters Podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. This podcast has been created not to dwell and over-evaluate what has already happened in the sports world, but to predict and to forecast what has yet to come. From game picks to draft picks, and from trades to free agent signings, we will let you know what happens before it happens. Your hosts, Nick and Nate, will evaluate, study, and understand sports patterns, tendencies, and nuances to better prepare you on what to expect. Just like weathermen, but way more accurate. So if you like to pick games or you simply just want to be in the know before anybody else, you are in the right place. Enjoy the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the next edition of the Sports Forecasters Podcast. I am your host, Nathan, along with Nick. I was out last week, but I'm back at it this week along with Nick. Today, we are going to give our final mock drafts of the NBA because that is coming up next Thursday already, believe it or not. So we finished the season, and just like that, we're talking about next season. And we got another division to knock off in our NFL division prediction series that we're doing. And so today we're going to do the AFC South. But I guess I want to first hear what you got to say about the NBA Finals. Obviously, it started off the way we thought it would with the Suns going. We both picked the Suns. You picked them in 5. I picked them in 7. But the Bucks seem to find the extra gear there and win 4 straight. What are your quick 1-minute thoughts there?
Yeah, nailed the number of games with 6, but not the right team. Just went the wrong way on that one. It was just, may not have been the most exciting series just because we've been so indoctrinated to chase superstars. Not that Giannis and Chris Paul in their own rights aren't superstars, but they just weren't those marquee names that we've always chased after or watched. For me, it was nice to see teams built from the ground up and not just thrown together in one off season and just, well, we're going to put together and try to make it happen. So for me, it was nice to see the return of the big man dominating down low or using athleticism to take advantages of weaknesses, not relying on the 3 ball, and just teams being built from the ground up. Those were the things I took away from the NBA Finals that I really enjoyed about it, and just a nice ring back to, I guess, simpler times before the super teams became a more prevalent thing. What were your takes, Nathan?
You know, the last 2 years, just in sports in general, but specifically the NBA, has been crazy. You know, we had that break with COVID and then the bubble, and it allowed a team like the Miami Heat to make the finals, who clearly weren't the best team in the East, but because it was a young squad that was focused, led by Jimmy Butler, and just this young squad who really didn't have too much family and wives and kids. It's just they were able to have that focus, and they stayed healthy and inside that bubble and got so far into the finals. This year with the 2 teams, you know, the Heat and the Lakers, who made the finals, had the shortest rest, and they were bounced in the first round this year. At the end of the day, you know, it's the healthiest team won, right? The Bucks have been the healthiest team all year. They had a lot of rest because they were bounced early last year in the playoffs, in the quarterfinals. And so they had plenty of rest, plenty of prep. I mean, they were the best team in the East last year. They were super talented and the most healthiest. They just didn't perform, so they got a lot of rest. Obviously, Giannis had a chip on his shoulder with 2 back-to-back MVPs, so it makes a lot of sense now that I go back to think about it, hypothetically. Okay, I see why they won, but at the end of the day, the healthiest team won. Really, if everybody was healthy, I would bet my bottom dollar this would be a Nets-Lakers final still, as we had projected it would be. But, you know, obviously the Lakers battled a lot of injuries. I think there were some distractions with Space Jam and everything else with LeBron as well. Then on top of that, you know, the Nets had at least 3 or 4 people injured all the time, and they were just a quarter inch away to beating the Bucks right before the Eastern Conference Finals. So To me, it was just a matter of who stayed the healthiest. I don't mean to be a downer here. You bring up a lot of good points. It's nice to see a team built from the ground up. I get it. But this was a one off year. I don't think it's going to really happen again. I think you're going to see the teams like the Lakers and the Nets kind of be here next year. That's proven time and time again in normal circumstances. That team does win. So I give Bucks a lot of credit. Giannis played his heart out, well deserved. But in all honesty, I just think it's a one-off year, and you're probably going to see a super team be in the finals next year.
It'll be interesting to see how things goes with that. But let's take a sidestep from the NBA for right now. We'll come back to it towards the end with the mock draft. But let's jump into the NFL. Last week we took a break from looking at the divisions. This week we're going to jump into the AFC South. So Nathan, I'm going to let you start it off with the AFC South. What team are we going to look at first? Looking at the AFC South.
Yeah, so I'm going to start off with the Tennessee Titans. They've added a weapon right in Julio Jones. I wasn't overly thrilled with their drafting and maybe outside Julio Jones their off season, but I think Tennessee is a try to do too much for their own good. It's a team that I had predicted they would decline from the previous year to last year, and that was correct. I mean, they went to the AFC Championship, and I felt like they took a step back, even though, I mean, they did make the playoffs, but they kind of underwhelmed in the playoffs. And I have them taking another step back this year, I think, even though with the addition of Julio Jones. A.J. Brown, an up and rising wide receiver in this league, and I almost think bringing on Julio Jones is really going to hurt that team because AJ was starting to become and figure out himself in this team and really be a top 5 wide receiver, in my opinion, in this league. And now you bring on a guy that's a veteran that wore the same number as him. You already got some like tension there, in my opinion. I mean, maybe they're not going to admit it publicly, but it's just like, oh, you're just going to come in here, take my number. This was my, I was going to be the leading wide receiver on this team, and I just feel like it's when a company maybe releases a new product too soon and it hurts the previous product when they weren't quite at the peak of sales. I forget the term for that. I learned it in school, but I forget the term off the top of my head. But I think that's what happens here. It's like they're bringing in Julio Jones. I think you brought in that guy too soon. And I think it's going to hurt AJ and his confidence. Julio, I think, is a little past his prime. And I think you're going to have a situation with like Odell and Jarvis in Cleveland, right? Baker did way better and the Browns did way better when Odell was out. But now when there's like Jarvis and Odell, it's like it's almost too much and they kind of hurt each other in a sense. And Baker played worse and the Browns played worse. And I think that same situation is going to happen in Tennessee. So I think they have another step back, even though you have more weapons, I don't think it's quote unquote the right weapons. What are your thoughts on Tennessee?
Tennessee last year, having a guy like Mike Vrabel that's very defensive oriented, it was perplexing how many points they would give up or how their defense just had the inability to stop people. It just didn't seem they had that put together. This offseason, they tried to address it by bringing in Dupree and Autry from their division rival, bringing in a few defensive backs. But like you said, I don't know that they addressed it very well in this offseason, that defensive side that was really missing it. And then offensively, they let go of some pretty good pieces for them. Corey Davis was an excellent 2 to A.J. Brown's 1. And Gianno Smith was awesome at getting those receptions and making the best of a situation, helping the team out. So losing those pieces, it'll be interesting to see how they do that. They're going to rest on the back of Derrick Henry, but the question becomes, how long can he carry that big load? Time has shown that those bodies start to show their age. They start to slow down a little bit more. I know Henry's game isn't predicated on speed, but how many more times are you going to be able to run a guy over and still have that same force? So Tannehill's going to have to really start. It's funny to say that the quarterback's going to have to try to lessen the load for Derrick Henry to still be that effective guy. I feel like they've done pretty good since Vrabel's been there in managing that. So I don't have them taking a tremendous step back, mostly because I don't have much faith in the division in general. So that kind of gives a precursor to how things are going to go. But yeah, they won it last year. This team, I feel like has figured out ways to stay competitive with the other team I believe is top of this division, which leads us next to the Indianapolis Colts. What are your thoughts on them, Nathan?
I'm a big fan of the Colts. I think this is probably the unpopular opinion, but I think they got the steal with Carson Wentz. I think they got the deal there. As a Philly fan, I don't know what you think about all of that, but they really didn't give up that much for a guy that was an MVP caliber quarterback not too long ago, who during that year before he got hurt, his offensive coordinator is now the head coach of the team he's currently on. I do like this relationship. I think it's going to work. Indy has a fantastic offensive line as opposed to Philadelphia. I think it could be a very dangerous team. It's a team that got into the playoffs with Philip Rivers last year. Philip Rivers was probably one of the most careless quarterbacks last year. I don't know if you guys watch any of the games, but he was having a ball. You knew it was his last year. He was just slinging it, flinging it. He really could care less, and they still made the playoffs, even though he really didn't have that good of a year. I think Carson Wentz has a chip on his shoulder. I think the head coach believes in him because he remembers the MVP caliber season in Philly not long ago when they won the Super Bowl. So I like this team. I like the direction they're going. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are.
Indianapolis Colts losing Rivers wasn't the major blow, but they've been doing the best they can and try to fill in that gap since Andrew Luck retired. So I feel like Frank Reich has done a phenomenal job of doing that. I feel like he's built a system where quarterbacks can come in and find some level of success and where they can be a competitive team. They have done a great job, as we mentioned, with the Suns and Bucks of building the foundation. I feel like the Colts did a really good job of building the foundation. The question this season for me is how well do they replace Costanzo? Costanzo was a staple of that offensive line. Do they have the right people in the place? Did they bring the right people in to help fill that in? I know they brought in a few free agents, most notably Eric Fisher, to try to fill that gap, but how well does that work? I do feel like for Carson Wentz, this was the best situation to go into, going back to the man that has faith in you, because that's that seemed to be the indication in Philadelphia. The coaching room lost faith in him. He didn't feel like they had his back, so Carson didn't feel like he wanted to be or he's wanted there. Trade happened. Like you said, Colts got a really great deal for this. A guy that's still fairly young, a guy that was successful under Reich's system. So I feel like Carson's in a better situation here. So I do think the Colts have potential to do well. It's just what are we going to see from Carson Wentz? Are things going to go well? And can they fill that gap with Costanzo retiring? What is that going to look like? And that's really where the question marks for me happen with the Colts is how well does that O line hold up? Because the last thing you want to see, being a fan of Philadelphia, the last thing you want to see is Carson Wentz having to scramble. If he chooses to scramble because there's a nice opening, that's a whole different situation. But if he's doing it out of necessity, that's where you run into trouble, and that's where you don't have him on the field. And you don't have Brissett there to come back him up. So I just feel like that quarterback position, yes, they got someone younger, someone that does have higher ceiling than where Rivers was at this point in his career. But without the depth, losing that offensive line, it makes me wonder how well is that going to shake out for them. Moving on next to a team that, quite frankly, is the reason why we held off on the AFC South up to this point, the Houston Texans. Nathan, what are you thinking about them?
Yeah, I think regardless of who's at quarterback at this point, I don't have high hopes for them. Even if Deshaun is the quarterback, there's going to be way too many distractions with his off the field legal issues he's dealing with. Obviously, a brand new coach that has zero coaching experience. They've traded away basically all their talent. So they're just in rebuilding mode. Even with Deshaun Watson, this is going to be a very underwhelming team. So that's all I really have to say. Not looking forward to the Texans season.
Yeah, for a long time, will Deshaun play or won't he play? And regardless of what happens, I agree. This team is a dumpster fire. O'Brien just tore this roster apart, did not leave anything in the cupboard, cleaned it out completely. Empty fridge equals years of rebuilding. A lot of people have walked, a lot of draft capital was lost. So the additions they put in, they tried to fill in certain things, but there was no home runs this offseason when they added different people. They tried to bring in a plethora of running backs because David Johnson isn't quite the back he used to be, which when that trade happened, head scratcher in itself. Try and bring in Ingram and Lindsey. Ingram's getting long in his career. Lindsey sometimes has trouble staying on the field, bringing in different linebackers, cornerbacks, and never really addressing the offense because, quite frankly, they're going to have Tyrod there to try to fill the gap for whoever I think they're going to look at the draft next season for a top pick. The reasons they didn't go for it this year, because the Deshaun thing wasn't quite at the peak of what it was now. Whatever happens with that, it's just they have to get ready to move on with the quarterback. And this year, it's just going to, if you're a Houston fan, just don't expect high winning percentage. You're just not going to have that many wins this season. I'm just not seeing that coming from them. So David Culley's going to have a rough first year. Hopefully they give him another year to kind of work it out to show improvement. But this year should not be the year you look at to decide if he's a good head coach or not. And then our last team of this division would be the Jacksonville Jaguars. Nathan, Urban Meyer, first year at the helm. What are you thinking?
You're going to see the most wild, inconsistent team in the league this year. I think there's going to be these games you're like, whoa, they look good. Like, just Urban's coming up with these unique, intelligent plays that just utilizes Lawrence and ETN and just that offense and that defense well, and just really exploit teams. You look and they look super impressive. And then I think there's going to be games where you look at them, they're going to be like, they just won by 20 points last game. Now they're getting beat by 20 points to a lesser talented team. Like, they're going to be the most confusing team. I feel like they're going to look super impressive one week and super disappointing the next week, because I think Urban he's a smart coach. He's a good coach. Clearly he's successful everywhere he's been. And I think he's going to bring a lot of new, fresh, unique ideas. Some are going to work, some aren't going to work. And his first year is kind of that testing process. And I feel like that's how their season's going to go. They're going to have these games where the times where they do work, they're going to look super good. And the times where it doesn't look, they're going to look super bad. So that's kind of my overall prediction. I think they're going to kind of be the most like unpredictable team of the season, and it's going to be a team I'm going to stay away from if I was going to bet on anything.
If this was 2020 season, it'd be easy to say Jacksonville Jaguars are going to hit rock bottom. They're going to tank because that's what they did. They won the first game and lost the next 15. This season will be a slight improvement, adding the talent and just teams not being able to prepare to see what the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to roll out in terms of offense or schemes that they're going to do. So I feel like this is kind of like when a rookie quarterback starts. It takes teams a few games to start figuring them out, and then their rocket high numbers start coming back down to earth. They start averaging out. They start evening out, and you get more of an idea of what they are. So, like you said, there are going to be games where you do see wild success. They have these amazing plays, or they come out with this victory that we didn't see coming. But overall, I just don't see them really landing on the map yet. This is not a team that's going to be a playoff team by any stretch. Spoiler, there's still more building pieces they need to do. Yes, they got a quarterback that could be the future in Lawrence, but you have to make sure you're putting him in the right situation and taking care of him. That way you have a future. I think it could be the start of something, but I don't know that Urban's going to be that guy that's going to really lead them to playoff hopes. But time will tell. So now let's look at what our win projections will be. In fourth place in division, Nathan, who do you have for the fourth place in the division?
I have the Houston Texans fourth place. The over under here is 5 wins. I have them way under. Obviously, this really depends on who's the quarterback. But even if Deshaun's the quarterback, I really don't see this team winning more than 5 games. I have them at the worst team in the league this year at 2-15. I do think Deshaun ends up not playing, whether he's traded or he sits out or whatever happens. Even if he does play, it's not going to be the Deshaun Watson that we know of. So I have them going 2-15.
I also have the Texans as the fourth place team this season. Like you said, the over under is 5. I have them under 5 as well. I'm giving them 3 just out of mercy, not because I'm really convinced that they're going to get 3. 2 does sound like a nice number, but I'm just going to say 3 simply because I feel like there's going to be a team that falls asleep or they just have that crazy game that they end up putting together because Tyrod has had potential in the past to do that. I don't know that he has much of that left, but I'm going to say 3 for this one, so not too far off of what you're saying. Who do you have third for the division, Nathan?
I got Jacksonville. The over under here is 6. I'm actually just gonna. This is one I'm gonna pass on because I have them at 6. I'm not even gonna bet on it. Like I won't even bet on any of their games this year. I think it's gonna be the most unpredictable team. I think one of the Houston's 2 wins this year are gonna be against Jacksonville, and it's gonna be one of those weird losses for Jacksonville where they probably lose by 2 touchdowns to Houston. I do think Jacksonville can rack up a few wins and get at least 6 here. I'm going to stick with 6 though. I think the AFC is a very strong division this year, so I think it's going to be a tough road for them. But I got them even at 6, which is what their over under is.
I also have the Jacksonville Jaguars as third in division, underman, still working the rebuild, while the other 2 teams on the other side, towards the top of the division, are teams that are a little more established, have more things going for them. So I have Jacksonville also third in division. I have them only getting 5 wins. So Texans, I had one more than you, and now I have the Jaguars one less. Just like you said, I think it's going to be up and down, really hard to gauge where the consistency will be this year. And there's going to be some wins that were surprises, and there's going to be head scratching losses. Like you were saying when I was going through trying to figure out where the wins and losses were, I do have the Jags and Texans potentially splitting them. So now comes the part of second in division. I feel like based on our overview of the teams, I think this might be different, but we'll see. Who do you have second in division, Nathan?
I have the Tennessee Titans second place. I think they don't make the playoffs this coming year. I have them winning 10. Their over under is 9.5. So I'm not the only one that's thinking they're gonna take a step back this year. 9.5 wins for a 17 game schedule for a team that just added Julio Jones, has made the playoffs the last 2 years. I think it's understood that they're going to take a step back. They feel like they're digressing. So surprisingly, I'm going to be taking the over here at 10-7. When you have Jacksonville and you have Houston in your division, that helps a lot. It's probably the weakest division in football. At least the bottom half is. I have Jacksonville and Houston being 2 of probably the worst 4 teams in the league this year. I think that's what. Well, I think 9.5 is quite low. It's a lot lower than I thought it was going to be, being in a weak division. So I think they do get the over, but I still think they're more of a disappointing team, and they missed the playoffs.
I actually have the Indianapolis Colts as second in the division with 10 wins, simply because I'm just not sure what we're going to get with Carson is what leads me to 10, and actually that's what their over under is at 10 wins. So I'm going to agree with the over and under on this. I'm just going to have the Colts there with 10 wins. So that leads us to having differing division champs. So I'll go ahead with the Titans. I actually have them at 11 wins. I think the sustainability of Derrick Henry, he will pull them through to get the 11 wins. I think early on, the Julio AJ Brown dynamic is going to be a little tumultuous, but nothing we'll see out on the papers or on the headlines. I think they work that out and figure it out, understanding what kind of quarterback Tannehill is and figuring out the system. It's something that's been established. So because they're the more established team, I actually have them getting 11 wins this year, just repeating what they did last year with one more loss because of the 17 games. So I have the Titans winning the division. You have the Colts, Nathan. What's the Colts win total for you?
Yeah, I have the over, obviously, since I have them winning, and I have them at 11 wins, actually. So we got 10, 11 wins, just different teams here. I kind of said it already, and I'll say it again. I think Carson Wentz is going to have a resurrecting season, potentially candidate for comeback player of the year. I like the fit. I like the offensive line, the weapons, the coaching. I just like the situation he's in, and he's clearly shown he's an MVP caliber quarterback in this league. I don't think that just magically goes away. I also don't think it was a fluke, because he kind of showed that previously. He was kind of getting to that point. I like the Colts. I like this organization. They're built well. They're strong. I felt like, they made the playoffs last year. Probably one of the most talented wildcard teams in the playoffs, in my opinion. I think Philip Rivers was playing very carelessly. I think they just barely lost to the Bills there in that opening round. So I think it was a 27-24 game there, and they just barely lost. So It's a very good football team, and I think Carson Wentz will win that division and the Colts will be hosting a playoff game.
Very good. That's what our views are on the AFC South. Now we'll finish up here with our mock NBA draft. We gave one earlier. It was just the top five picks, just right after the lottery had been established on who was in what order. So Nathan and I are going to give our lottery picks. So that would be picks 1 through 14 here. So Nathan, since the last time we talked, we both had an individual at the number one pick. Did your number one pick change?
Absolutely not. Kate Cunningham going to the Pistons. I'll bet every cent I have on that.
And I agree as well. Kate Cunningham, pick number two.
I think I have a change here. I have Jalen Green going to the Rockets. I this is how I do mock drafts. I look at the face, I picture him in the jersey. It's kind of weird. I mean, I look at what needs they need to fill. Number one, but number two, I just try to see the player. And I initially had Suggs in this spot, but I can't picture that. I pictured Jalen Green, and plus he's a shooting guard. They lost Victor Oladipo. They've lost James Harden the past year. They need a shooting guard. I think this is a very obvious choice here, and I have him going to the Rockets.
I also have Green going here. Pick number three.
This one doesn't change for me. I have Evan Mobley out of the USC. Another player that I just see in a Cavs jersey. I mean, I know it sounds really weird. I mean, they need a center. They need height. They lost Drummond to the Lakers, so obviously need to fill that position. I feel like their backcourt is they have some talent there that they can build off of. Kevin Love's getting old. They lost Drummond, so I think it's a very good pick for them. Evan Mobley. I'm super confident in my top three.
I have Evan Mobley as well. So moving on to number four, Toronto Raptors. Who do you have?
Now this is where I have Jalen Suggs, and this makes more sense. I initially had the Rockets, but I'm really confident in the Toronto Raptors. Kyle Lowry, I believe this is his free agent year. Get Suggs. Kyle Lowry's not going to come back. I think the Lakers are going to make a big push at him. If they don't get Chris Paul, they're going to make a big push for Kyle Lowry. I don't know. Lowry might be a free agent this year. I'm not sure. If he is or if he isn't, his days are numbered in Toronto. I can picture Suggs in a Raptors uniform. I think you're going to have to find that replacement for Lowry ASAP, and Jalen Suggs the guy.
I completely agree. I think Jalen Suggs will be best suited for the Toronto environment. So I have him there at number four as well. Pick number five, Orlando Magic. Who do you have?
Man, are we going to disagree on anything, man? I have Jonathan Kaminga out of the Congo going here. I initially had the Magic getting, I believe, the Florida State guy here. I think his name was Scotty Barnes. Yes, Scotty Barnes. I initially had him picking him up here. I think Scotty has dropped a bit in the draft. They're going to get this guy, Kaminga, out of the Congo. They need to fill their big guys. You know, they traded away two of their big guys last season. That's where they need to fill in the gaps. This is one step closer to filling those gaps.
When we first did this mock draft version one, I said Kaminga. I'm sticking with Kaminga for number five for the Magic. Number six, this is this new territory, Oklahoma City. Who do you have going for Oklahoma City?
Now this may be a little bit of surprise. I don't know if this is an overdraft a bit, but I think this is the steal of the draft. I think he's underrated. He's a baller. And I have Davion Mitchell out of Baylor going here to OKC. I feel like it's somewhat local pick here. Baylor, obviously Texas, going to Oklahoma. I feel like you get that local guy is going to be huge that knows the area well. He played lights out in the tournament. A fantastic player compared to people like Donovan Mitchell, compared to people like Dwayne Wade. I don't know why he's not higher in some of these drafts. Mock drafts, but I think he's a fantastic guy. I think he's a perfect fit in OKC, and I have Davion Mitchell out of Baylor going to the Thunder.
And this is where the disagreement begins. I have Scotty Barnes actually going here for Oklahoma City. They just looking for players. He did well in the tournament, so they look to fill a need at guard. Well, they have many needs, but they look to start to fill those needs at guard with Scotty Barnes, number six for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Number seven, Golden State Warriors. Who do you have at number seven for the Golden State Warriors?
I got the Duke freshman Jalen Johnson, who opted out in midseason. I got him going to the Warriors. Point guard and shooting guard, they don't really need any help. So strong forward and up, I think, is where they need to go. So they have the luxury of having two high picks in this draft, 7 and 14, and I think they get height. So and they got their center last year, so I think a shooting forward and a power forward what they're going to go after. So I got Jalen Johnson, shooting forward out of Duke. Don't know much about him because he didn't play that much, but I mean he was a 5-star recruit out of high school going to Duke, so obviously has the potential. And lately, Duke freshmen have been playing fantastic in the NBA, from Jason Tatum to Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett, who had a pretty good season with the Knicks this year. So I think drafting a Duke player. I'm not saying this because I'm a Duke fan, but I just think it's shown lately that Duke freshmen have succeeded quite soon in the NBA, at least as of late.
Well, your reach one pick ago it was a reach, but only by one pick. I have Davion Mitchell actually going number 7 to the Warriors. I like what he has, what he can bring to the table, and I think the Warriors end up snagging him here at this position. Pick number 8, Orlando Magic also has 2 picks, both lottery picks, just like the Warriors. Who do you have the Magic taking with their second pick at pick number 8?
Yeah, so my first mock draft, when they were number 5, I had them getting Scotty Barnes. But I actually have them getting Scotty Barnes at number 8. I think it's just another big guy that they need to fill that gap of losing Vujicic and losing Gordon, I believe his name was. I can't think of names right now. The guy that went to the Nuggets. They need to replace that height, and I think Scotty Barnes, Florida guy, I think he drops to them at 8, even though I had him going to 5 originally. I think they pick him up here at 8, and but yeah, that's my pick.
Honestly, Magic can use any help. They traded away the farm last season, so it's what it is. So anything they can get, honestly. Well, with Orlando Magic, I have them taking James Bunite or Bouknight. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but sophomore from UConn. Like Nathan alluded to, they unloaded a lot last year, just knowing that they needed to blow up the roster, start over. So I believe that's where they go with that, based on who's left. They're going to go with James Bunite just to hopefully get them some versatility, give them a spark to get that franchise going again. So that's who I have for number 8. Number 9, Sacramento Kings. Nathan, who do you have them taking?
I have them taking a shooting guard as well, but a different one. I've got him Brandon Boston Jr. out of Kentucky. Kings typically go after Kentucky players historically. So I'm going to keep that trend. That's the trend here. That's my logic on this pick. I do agree with you. Shooting guard is what's going to be picked here, but I got the Kentucky guy, Brandon Boston Jr.
I have the Kings going with someone a little different than that. Actually, I have them going with someone in the SEC, but not from Kentucky, from Tennessee. I have them going with Keon Johnson. He was a freshman this last year, a guard. Sacramento, like many other teams, are just trying to find that identity. I think Keon Johnson is where they start to try to start the youth of their draft. Number 10, New Orleans Pelicans. Who do you have them taking?
I got the Pelicans getting Trey Mann out of Florida. A point guard here. I think that's where they need to fill. They lost Drew Holiday last year. They traded him to the Bucks. I feel like Lonzo Ball's future in New Orleans is very bleak and doubtful. So those are two big name guys that obviously you just won a championship in Milwaukee. Lonzo looks like he's out the door. You're going to have a pretty big point guard gap there. You got to get a point guard there. You got to make sure all your bases are covered because you got to make Zion happy. So I got Trey Mann out of Florida going to New Orleans.
This may be a bit of a reach, but I do think they go guard, but I think they're going to go with the first Michigan player to go off the board. I think they're going to take Franz Wagner. I believe he'll go with them and just help solidify that guard position, help bring some stability to it, because I don't believe, like you said, Ball is the long-term solution there. He's on his way out. So start with a young guy that can just hopefully energize and help elevate Williamson, or help Williamson's game continue to elevate in the league and help that team find its footing to keep Williamson on the roster. Number 11, we have the Charlotte Hornets. Who do you have them taking?
Yeah, this is the one that I have no idea because the Hornets always pick a player that I'm always scratching my head. I'm like, what? That Frank Kaminsky pick. I was like, what? A few years ago. So, um, yeah, I just don't know what Michael Jordan's gonna do here. So this is my random pick. So I'm gonna pick a guy that I can't pronounce his name. I'm gonna pick a guy that I've never heard of before. Freshman out of Stanford. I'm gonna guess his name is Zaire. I'm sorry, Mr. Williams, but you're gonna go to the Pelicans, or I'm sorry, the Hornets, because I have no idea who they're gonna draft because I never do. So that's just my random pick. That was my logic there.
Well, mine was a random pick as well. I think he's going to look overseas for this one. When we spin the wheel, where does it land on in international players? For the Hornets, they end on Josh Giddey. Sorry if I didn't say your last name right, but I think they take Josh Giddey. I think that's where they go. Shrug shoulders, maybe. Number 12, Nathan, who do you have the San Antonio Spurs taking?
Well, you almost made me giddy a little bit on that one because I actually have Giddy going to the Spurs. I mean, the Spurs are known for drafting um, overseas players. They've been very successful at it. So why not continue that? I do think they need to build in the front court more. So I know he's a shooting forward. He's got a lot of height. I think he's going to fill in the gaps there that they need and help that Spurs team to hopefully get back to the playoffs like they're known for doing. But Spurs, Australian overseas player, that's my logic there. I like this.
Yeah, I already used up Giddy, so I can't go too much in the international, although there are plenty to choose from. A team that I was high on when we did the bracket challenge, the Arkansas Razorbacks. I'm going to go with Moses Moody. DeRozan is getting older, and having someone to complement him will hopefully help the Spurs find their way back into the playoffs. They were close this year and just faltered towards the end. So I think this would be a pick that would help them get back on that track and get popped back into the playoffs. Number 13, we have the Indiana Pacers. Who do you have the Pacers taking here in this spot?
I've got the German out of the University of Michigan, Franz Wagner, going to the Pacers. Perfect fit here. Um, this is one outside of my top three. I am guaranteeing is going to happen.
Well, obviously, I disagree because I have him going a few picks ago. So, number 13 for the Pacers, I actually have them taking an individual you said earlier. I have them taking Jalen Johnson at this spot. Pacers are looking for someone to carry the torch. Small forwards seem to be the position where ignites a team, so to speak, for some franchises. And the Pacers will look at this position and take Jalen Johnson, who's available at this point in the draft at the number 13 pick. Pick number 14, Golden State's second pick and our last pick of the lottery picks that we're going to go over in this podcast. Who do you have them taking?
Yeah, first off, I want to be surprised if 76ers get this pick. I see potential Warriors going after Ben Simmons and may trade away one of these picks. They won't trade away the 7. If they trade any of them, well, it'll be 14. So watch out for that pre-draft. But assuming Warriors have it, I got them getting Kai Jones out of Texas. Actually, got to watch this guy play when I went to the Final Four, the championships in Indiana for the NCAA March Madness. I once again I alluded it to before. I think they need to work more on that front court, not the back court. Power forward out of Texas, just to be there to give James Wiseman some more support in that front court. Jalen Johnson's a shooting forward. I think they're going to get a number 7 overall. So to help the backcourt a little bit more. So, anyways, I've got, long story short, Kai Jones out of Texas going to the Warriors.
And for number 14, like Nathan alluded to, I can see the Warriors looking at maybe dealing out this pick as well. Whether it's 76ers or not, I'm not sure, but I could see them trading out of this. But if they don't, or whoever goes in the spot, actually have them, and I'm going to slaughter his name, but he's a Turkish player that's 6'10", so presumably playing forward, maybe some center in today's league, and that'll be Alperen Seguin. I don't know. that would be my pick for number 14. If the Warriors stay put there, they need some depth in their forward/center department. This would be a center for the Warriors team how it's currently constructed. So I believe that's where they'll go. They'll try to get this Turkish player, try to bring him from overseas to try to give more depth to their roster. That's who I have them taken at the number 14 pick.
So we're going to apply the same rules as we did with the NFL draft. Guess the player to the team, 3 points, or guess the player in the spot, 3 points. If you guess the player and the spot, it's 5 points. Within one position, it's 2 points. Within two positions, worth 1 point. So very confusing scoring system, but don't worry. We know how it's done, and we'll see who wins, Nick or I. So I believe, Nick, you beat me in the NFL draft. Is that correct?
I believe so, but it was only by like a point or two, so it wasn't like I had a easy endeavor with it.
So we'll see how this one goes.
All right, and that's going to conclude it. We took a look at our final thoughts of the NBA Finals, AFC South, and then we did our NBA mock draft, which we'll have posted here around the time that we get this podcast posted. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are the Sports Forecasters. Nathan Singer, I'm Nick Alvarez, and we'll see you next time.